Okay, here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. You are watching Why Am I Yelling Live. I'm Krista. I'm your host. I am super excited about our guest today. I have been following Emily for several months now, and she's been scheduled to be on our show for a little while, and I couldn't wait to talk about this topic because I feel like I was just saying to her before we started the broadcast that it's something that we don't necessarily think about in our daily lives as something that we probably should be more mindful of as we go through our everything. So I want to introduce to you guys Emily Hooks. She is the author of The Power of Forgiveness, A Guide to Healing and Wholeness, and she is the founder of the Forgiveness Academy. Her mission is to share the power of forgiveness with the world and help us all realize our true strength in the absence of both fear and the illusion of victimhood. She facilitates workshops throughout the United States, and she provides group trainings and personal in-person and online, and coaches individuals through the forgiveness process. So if you would please help me welcome Ms. Emily Hooks. Emily, we're so glad you're here. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
So tell me, because my first question to everybody is always the same. How did you start your journey or realize your journey and your path to becoming a forgiveness coach? And what is a forgiveness coach? Take me through that.
Absolutely. So it's kind of an amazing story. A few years ago, I was in a book club with some friends, most of them new, and we were having a conversation about forgiveness. It was one of the 4 principles in the book we were reading called The 4 Spiritual Laws of Prosperity by Edwin Gaines. Okay. And at the end of the book club, one of the women came up and said, would you help me forgive my mother? You have a really detailed sort of comprehensive understanding of forgiveness. And I said, sure. I was working as a freelance writer at the time, and I had the time. So we started walking around Town Lake in downtown Austin and having a conversation about it. And I started writing, and I developed, I'd written the book, and I developed a comprehensive curriculum within 4 or 5 months.
Wow.
Of that conversation. So it sort of was one of those moments when you look back and you go, wow, that question actually changed my life substantially. Now, backing up from that, even though I'd never really thought about the extent to which I understood the concept of forgiveness, I had been applying it in my life for 15 years.
Okay.
And I'm systematically forgiving everyone in my life. And I won't go into the whole backstory, but I've overcome some pretty substantial trauma in my life, childhood abuse. I was abducted by my father when I was young. I was in abusive relationships as an adult. I was actually a homeless and addicted to drugs for a few years. So not only have I forgiven other people, but I've also forgiven myself, which is actually the hardest thing for most of us to do. So the understanding is organic. And the beautiful thing about forgiveness is if you study it, what you find is the process is universal. And so really my mission is to add to that conversation. This is how I did it. This is how I journeyed through that universal process, and now I'm sharing it with other people.
I love it. I'm so interested in this because, like what you say, like the ability to forgive others and then the ability to forgive yourself, which is more important probably, right? Because we beat ourselves up for so much and the things that we should have done or maybe we did that we shouldn't have done. And so I know today we're going to talk about forgiveness in the family, and that is really important to me because lately, this is on like a very, worldly level. I feel like a lot of people are losing friendships and relationships in their families just because of what's happening in the world, right? We see all the stress on social media. We see all the stress of what's happening, just politically and socially and all this stuff. And I personally have friends who have lost friends and have, you know, divides in their relationships because of things that they have no control over. And I feel like, you know what, if we all just kind of stepped back and forgave each other a little bit more, a lot of this probably wouldn't be happening. So I want to talk about this. I want to talk about, I think it's an art, forgiveness. I do. I feel like it's something that we probably have to learn a little bit to be a little bit better at.
Absolutely.
And I think that, applying it in a family sense is important too. So tell me what, what the dynamic is, or how, forgiveness in a family comes into play, and why it's so difficult for some people.
Yeah. So actually, I'd like to start by talking about why it's important, particularly in a family unit. And then we can address the divides that we're experiencing in the world and how that relates, because you're absolutely right. That is about forgiveness. And it's just a continuation of what happens in our families and in our own lives.
Yep.
The reason that forgiveness in the family is so important is because one of the major benefits of forgiveness is that it breaks multi-generational dysfunctional cycles. So what I mean by that is, where do we learn to be angry? Where do we learn to be aggressive? Where do we learn to hold our grudges? Where do we learn to not empathize with people in the world? And the answer to that question is from our primary caregivers. And so, we are, as individuals, adult individuals who have grown up in an environment where they weren't conscious of forgiveness and of the power of not approaching the world as us and them.
Yep.
Right? Which is essentially one component of what I teach, which is that there are less differences than we perceive, and we're focused on differences. And that is why relationship, rather than actively choosing to empathize and connect with people, we're choosing to protect ourselves. And it's a fear response, So back to the family question, or the family conversation. So when we actively learn to become more forgiving, which is what I teach and what there are a lot of resources out there to learn how to do it, it's a process. It's a purposeful process. It's not magical. It's not a declaration. And that's why forgiveness gets such a bad rap. That's the hurdle that I'm overcoming, is they're like, it doesn't make any difference. And the reality is people have no idea what it is. It's not about letting it go. If we could let it go, we'd just let it go, because we don't want to give our energy away to the negative things in life, right? It's about processing how we feel. And what we learn and what we teach our kids, if we're not aware of it, is how to ignore the negative feelings, because they're disruptive. We don't want to deal with them.
Right.
And it's painful. But forgiveness really is about getting in touch with those feelings. And I teach how to do that in a structured way, so that it's not disruptive to the rest of your life. And then learning to release the judgment that we have around things. So the number one question I get asked is, how do you forgive? And the answer to the question is 2 words: release judgment. If you can release your judgment about the situation, the need for forgiveness goes away. But that's not very easy to do when we think we're right.
Right.
It's a little tricky, right? We're like, well, I would be friends with that person, but they're completely wrong,
Right.
So we have to learn some more tools that we can use in order to get to that place of choosing our humanity and connection to people over being right. Now, that doesn't mean we have to agree with people. It means that there's an alternative to feeling and needing to be right about our position.
I'm fascinated by this. I'm not going to lie. I am, because I'm thinking about so many different situations where, even if we had the tools to go into a situation, my whole thing is I oftentimes tell clients and friends and family members and stuff, like, to have zero expectation when you go into a specific event or a situation or something. When you're doing something nice or something good and you're giving something, you should have zero expectation of ever getting anything back. like the gratitude that you feel in giving should be enough.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who have a hard time with that.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you walk into a situation or approach a situation or a conversation or a person or whatever it is with no judgment, like preconceived no judgment, right? That might be a little bit easier when you're having a conversation or trying to, understand a point of view or something, instead of going in with a preconceived notion about something. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. You know what's fun about that is the reason we do that, and how that relates to forgiveness is, so something happens in life, and usually these things start when we're very young, and we make a decision about how we need to show up in order to avoid that happening again.
Yeah.
And we've got this thing, when you're 5 and your mom blamed you for something that your brother did, we
right.
think, okay, we have to, I have to be louder or whatever, and then when we're 8, something happens, the teacher picks someone else for best paper, and we think we have to be the class clown. So we've got all these points in life, and they don't have to be big things, sometimes are, but the impact is the same, right? So we're making all these decisions, and we're not going back and reevaluating them. So what happens is, when we don't go back and forgive those moments, forgive ourselves or the other people, we're narrowing our view of the world around these things that we've already decided are true. Right. And that's what makes a rigid, judgmental framework and worldview for people, because they've taken life and said, well, this is the way it is. Well, life isn't anyway. Life is just what it is. It's not working against you. It's not, life is just, and so we have a choice, like by choosing to forgive the moments in time that we perceived at the time as causing harm, we are opening up to the possibility that life is actually quite beautiful, and that the surprises in life are the most beautiful thing, right? So, when we walk into a situation with all these preconceived notions based on past experiences, we're missing all the things that might surprise us.
Right.
So, there could be a million things about that person that just blow your mind, right? Right. And then you think they're beautiful and you think they're wonderful, but when we are attached to being right, when we are attached to knowing what the world is supposed to look like, we miss all those things. And that's the real power of forgiveness. The real power of forgiveness is that all of a sudden you're opening up to a whole world that may be actually quite beautiful, but we're not. It's not a reflection of all the things that have happened in the past. Here's an example. How many times? I'll give a personal example. I historically have dated a lot of people who were dishonest. Okay. Yeah. And until my last relationship, which was a long-term relationship, it ended in 2015. Until the end of that relationship, I just could not get that I was looking for that, right? I was looking for the very thing that scared me the most, because I didn't want to be surprised by it. So I was seeking that out, and that's the power of non-forgiveness, is that we're so fearful about this one thing that it's actually what we're looking for, right?
That's amazing. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you really think about it, you're probably right. It's what they say when people, I'll use the relationship example, right? Women and men sometimes, they keep going back to the same type of relationship that they've had over and over and over, because it's what they know and what they're looking for. They don't realize that it's not what they should be looking for. They should be looking for the exact opposite, because that's probably what's going to nurture them and sustain them and fulfill them. Right?
Yeah. Well, the key to that is we might know that. I'm not a big fan of shoulds and shouldn'ts. I don't know about what they shouldn't do, but if they don't go back and forgive the origin of that fear, whatever it is, whether it was because your dad was a liar or your first boyfriend was a liar or whatever, until you go back and let that go, and I don't mean just let it go, you process it, you allow the suffering to move through you, you fall in love with your experiences since then, And that's what forgiveness is. It's about the transformation from fear to love, compassion, and empathy for other people. And I don't mean that in just a woo-woo way. Yes, I'm pretty woo, but but it's actually what happens. That's the process. The process is we move from being pissed off to being happy.
Right.
And the way I do, yeah, go ahead.
I feel like it's like a it's almost like a grieving process, right? You go through all the stages. You go through the anger and the right.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
walk me through it.
Walk you through the process?
Yeah, like okay, so use an example. Let's say I don't know what is like okay, so what is like if you have a client that comes to you looking like for forgiveness, are they looking to forgive a situation? Are they looking to forgive a person? Are they like I'm sure you have all different kinds of scenarios, right? And so like how do you start? Like I would imagine you start with let's identify this situation, let's talk about it, and let's find out, you know, what it is about it that you feel like you need to forgive kind of thing. Because I you know, like I also want to talk about this because how do we teach our children the right way to forgive, right? I mean, I have an 11-year-old and a 5-year-old, and perfect example. Last Saturday, Wyatt, my 11-year-old, and he's a teenager, and it's like we're at the point where, you know, and he, you know, he's usually a really good kid, and he's just, you know, he was in a mood, and I asked him to do something, and he back talked me, and I asked him again, and I was, hey, can you do me a favor kind of thing, and he, no, not no, hey, can you do me a favor? There was no yelling until he said no again with an attitude and a few other words, and I lost my mind and yelled at him and was like, I can't believe you're like, what are you doing? And he got punished. Give me the phone, no more Pokemon going, like you're done. Like you need to understand that you can't, I wasn't speaking to you like that. I wasn't being disrespectful or degrading and I wasn't even, I was asking you to help me with something. And toward the end of the day, after he had been punished, you know, he said to me after dinner, he was like, you know, it was fine. He was like, can I have my, no, I said, I haven't gotten an apology. And I need to forgive you for this, and you need to apologize for it, and you need to understand why. And so I feel like, and I had to walk him through why my feelings were hurt and why he can't speak to other people that way, especially his mother. So I think for kids to understand it, like, how do we explain it to them?
Yeah. So there are a couple of things there. I mean, the short answer to the question is the way kids learn to become forgiving is when their caregivers are forgiving.
Right.
And not just forgiving of them, but forgiving of everyone.
Yep.
And so we demonstrate it. It's not, you could share how to do it a million times, and until they learned it from somebody, it wouldn't stick, I don't think, because it's one of those things. It's like, teaching someone how to love. You know, how do you teach someone how to love? Well, you just love them.
Right.
So you do that. So there's a difference between an apology and forgiveness.
Sure.
Forgiveness is an internal process, right? So it's something that we do. It's independent of what anybody else does. And so I think the answer to your question is, how do we teach? How could I have pointed out remorse to Wyatt, right? What you really wanted him to do was feel remorseful for what he had done because it impacted you. And I think the way you did it was by saying, so I feel sad about this because I was trying to just have a conversation with you, and you responded in a way that I perceived to be unkind, and it hurt me. And as a result of that, I would appreciate it if you would show me that you feel bad about it, not because of what happened, but because of how I feel.
Right.
And that would lay that conversation where it's about how I feel and about how they feel, lays a really strong foundation for the emotional competency that we need to become forgiving. So to go back to your other question, there are 5 strengths that that really, if we all had, forgiveness would be a natural process. The first one is to understand our story. So, and I'll just really quickly say what I mean by that. There's a difference between what happens and the story that we have about what happens. So, for example, in the story you just told, the fact that he was being disrespectful is your story about it.
Yep.
That's what happens. And then we make up stories about what happened, and they seem very real to us. But in reality, they're not real. Stories are never real. They're just what we're saying they are, and we get to choose that. And that's the powerful thing about our story. The two things that are powerful about the story. The first is that we're choosing it. Like we're writing the story, you know. The second one is that it's happening right now. So I could say, well, I was kidnapped when I was 7, and that happened when I was 7. Well, if I have feelings about it, that's happening right now.
Right now. Okay.
And the beautiful thing about that is that means we have power over it. We have control over it. If something's happening right now, we have the opportunity to relate to it differently. And so that's yeah. So that's the first one. The second one is emotional awareness, which we just kind of talked about. It's really about relating to people from this is how I feel and how it's impacted me type of communication, rather than this is what happened and why it happened. We don't know why things happen. Everybody's just making. I mean, we need to know, especially as parents. We want to know, but I think deep down inside, we all know. We're just kind of making everything up.
It is the truth.
The third one is non-judgment, which we've kind of talked about. That's the hardest one for almost everyone.
Yeah.
The fourth one is empathy, and what I mean by that is just choosing to relate to someone's humanity over the judgment that we have about them. And empathy, in my opinion, not every forgiveness expert agrees with this, but in my opinion, true forgiveness requires empathy of the person that caused harm, which means we get to a point eventually of feeling love and gratitude for them. And so somebody that's experienced trauma, at the beginning of the process, they're like, no, that's never going to happen.
No way.
Well, yeah. Well, I can tell you that it can happen if you want it to, because I love deeply and appreciate deeply all of the people in my past and in my life. Would I want it to happen again? Would I want it to happen to somebody else the way it happened to me? No, that's not the same thing. It already happened. So how I relate to it is to me, right? Yeah. And if I want to love me today, then I need to be grateful for the things that have happened in the past. And that's my choice. And that's the power of forgiveness. And then the forgiveness itself, which is, I've defined it in an 8-step process, and it's very structured. It can take anywhere from a day to 18 months to move through the process, depending on how difficult it was. But the reality is it takes one understanding, one realization around the power of our story or around being right to sort of shift everything for people. And once that first shift happens, the process really is not challenging at all.
Huh.
Yeah. And I do want to answer another question that you asked, because it was a great question.
Go ahead.
You asked, when people come to me, do they want to forgive a person? Do they want to forgive a thing? Do they, what do they want to? So usually what happens when people come to me is they're kind of just generally pissed off, or,
a mad world.
And they blame somebody for it.
Yep. Yep.
They blame somebody in a global way. Like, because my mom was this way, I'm this way. Right. So that's usually what happens. And it can be anybody. It can be my ex. It can be my child. It can be, it doesn't matter who the person is.
Sure.
So they have this like really general globalized feeling that person is the reason that they're suffering today. And it's really, really hard to forgive someone for being a bad person, because that's a judgment. Like,
Right.
who says they're a bad person? Does everyone in the world think they're a bad person? Probably not. Probably their mom thinks they're amazing, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah. So we have to break it down. So the easiest way to do that and the easiest way to move through the process is to forgive a person for doing something. Because
Okay.
that's what, so let's go back to the example with your son. Where is the need for forgiveness? It's in what he said. It's in what he did.
Yep. Not what he did. Yeah. Yep.
And the injury between human beings always happens in action,
Okay.
right?
I can see that. That makes complete sense. Yeah.
Yeah. We do things to each other that hurt. And that's what we're forgiving. So we have to let go of this generalized sense that somebody's just a terrible person and think about what they did that caused you to feel that way. And that can take a little work. It's the first 3 steps in the process, the 3 or 4 steps in the process, is to really kind of break that down a little bit and see, so for me, forgiving my mom was one of the hardest things that I had to do, even though she very clearly did the best that she could. And my father was probably the true protagonist in the story.
Right.
I blamed her because I wanted her to save me, right? I wanted her to rescue me from him. And I perceived that she didn't do that. So when I started my forgiveness journey, I thought she was cold-hearted. Now that's a judgment. It's a story that I had. She wasn't available for me. She didn't give me what I needed. Well, all of those things were really disempowering. So what I did was I broke it down and I said, you know what? That time when I was 13 and you yelled at me on the stairs and said I was being dramatic, that really had a huge impact on me. And that time in 10th grade when you didn't pick me up from school, or the 5th time you didn't pick me up from school, right? Whatever it is. You would have to have...
You harbor these. Yeah, you harbor them. Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be comprehensive, but it does need to represent sort of the evolution of your anger about the situation or your sadness about the situation. And those are the things I gave her for. And when I started forgiving her for those things, what I started to see was the truth of the matter is, the truth that I choose is that she really truly was doing the best that she could. She searched for me for 3.5 years. She had no idea where I was. She had no idea if I was alive.
Unbelievable.
Right? She didn't know if I was alive.
I would lose my mind. Right.
Right. I mean, when I get in touch with the feeling of that, even today, I feel nothing but love for my mother.
Right. That's powerful. That's powerful.
Yeah.
We have a question. My friend Micheline is asking, what if someone won't share their story so you can't gain understanding for forgiveness?
So this is tricky for people. The forgiveness work that we do. And the forgiveness work that other people do, they do.
Yep.
So, when we start meshing those together, my encouragement to people is to offer resources to them to figure it out, because we can't figure it out for other people.
Right.
We can demonstrate it, and I'll tell you that in my life, moving through this transformed the dynamic in my family throughout my family, and nobody else knew I was doing it. I wasn't talking to anyone about I'm forgiving you, because that's kind of rude.
Right. You just did it. Right.
A little passive aggressive, well, what are you doing for? So it was work that I did.
Right.
So I don't mean to not answer the question, but
No, I think you did. I think it's, we all have to take ownership for our own things. And like you said, the story that's happening between you and I, we could be interpreting it 2 completely different ways, but it's still our story, right? And we have to realize that, we have to forgive that story if there's forgiveness associated with it in our own way. And then the other person has to forgive it in their own way. We can't really, like you said, you can't forgive for somebody else. You can only forgive for yourself.
Yeah. Now, and this is one of the reasons that forgiveness in the family is more difficult, which is what, what we were going to talk about. Because forgiveness within an active relationship is by far the hardest thing to do. And the reason for that is forgiveness and trust and forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing.
Right.
Trust and reconciliation require compromise. They require mutual understanding. They require a commitment to change behavior. So it's a collaborative effort. Forgiveness does not have to be. Now, if it is a collaborative effort, that's beautiful. If you can go through the process with somebody, that's wonderful, but it's not necessary.
Okay.
Where if you're trying to repair a relationship, the forgiveness needs to take place separately. The trust and reconciliation is really about practical things. It's about, no, I'm not going to do that anymore, and do I believe you, right? Whereas the forgiveness is about me being willing to feel love and connection to the person again. And you can do that and never trust them again.
Huh. I mean, I can absolutely see this in a lot of different situations. So Micheline said that's her issue. She keeps hoping the behavior of the other person will change. Yeah. Okay. And I could see where, if it's a family thing, or even if it's a friend thing or whatever, like it's a personal relationship to you, so it's important. Yeah. I could see where, you want to know from their side how they're feeling, and I get it. It's I would imagine it's hard, and I think it happens in probably every family. Like, you have to at some point go through a process if it's with a parent, if it's with a sibling, or whoever. We don't always get along all the time, and it doesn't have to be so deep, but it even the surface stuff sometimes can get overwhelming.
Absolutely. It's the little things can have a big impact, and that's when you start to identify those things in real time, forgiveness becomes a very, very powerful attribute that we can have. It really becomes a virtue, because we're not giving our energy away to all those little things. So when we can say, you know what, I wish that had happened differently, and I can see their point of view, and let go of being right in real time, man, life gets a lot more enjoyable when we can do that. And you have to lay the foundation of forgiving the big things in order to get to that place. You really do, because until you can truly appreciate the power of how it feels to be free from those things, it's hard to let go of the little things, because we really want to be for a while.
Yes, of course. And if you're that right, I like to be right. I could talk to you all day. Like, that's not a lie. I'm fascinated by it, because, I'm watching my kids go through it, and we're with their friends, and we've all been there. We've all had to experience it on some level for ourselves. And I think it's a very powerful tool, like you said, to be able to do it in real time. It's like, okay, if I can forgive something immediately, wow, my whole day can change. And a lot of people wake up with anger, and that's not me. I don't wake up with anger, but there are a lot of people in this world that wake up just angry. And if they could just forgive themselves and their situation and whatever it is that got them to that point, you're right. It would all be very different. It would be a very different outlook on the world, and what their day looked like, or how their the rest of their lives look like. And I think it's something, as coaches and as people who are out to help other people inherently for what we do, we're oftentimes trying to find remedies or answers, or ways to fix things to help other people have an easier time, enjoy their lives, find inner peace and all that stuff. And so I think, like I said at the beginning of this, I think we forget, or we don't include forgiveness in that process, because it's not something that we think about off the top of our head. I was thinking about it this morning in the shower when I was like talking to myself in my head, like I do all day long. And I'm like, okay, have I really thought about it? It's like, I've apologized to people in my life. Yes, I've apologized to myself too. But have I really thought about it so deeply that it it could become a daily you can actually probably have a daily forgiveness practice, right? Like, that was a really crappy thing that happened to me today, but I forgive that because this is what I learned from it, or however it is that you want to include it in like your affirmations or whatever it is.
Just like the gratitude practice. A lot of people have a gratitude practice. And you can
every morning I do. Yeah. So before I go to bed. So I think that, maybe including that in like your mindset work, and I'm on the woo-woo side also. And so it's, I love all that stuff. I think it's important. And my Uncle Frank just said, it doesn't always mean forgetting. Right. It doesn't mean always forgetting, but it means moving on. Right. And it means accepting would be a word.
Yeah, absolutely. Ultimately, that's exactly what it is. It's accepting that things are the way they are. And who are we to say they should be different?
Right.
Right? That you being us being indignant about the way things are doesn't fix anything. And that just to be clear, I don't mean to advocate for passivity. In fact, when we become forgiving, we get more clear about the things that matter, right? We get more clear about justice. We get more clear about what works for us in relationship and what doesn't, because we have an experience of love and compassion and empathy. We care about ourselves on a fundamental level, and we care about other people on a fundamental level. So forgiveness actually makes you more empowered, not less. And definitely doesn't mean forgetting. In fact, it just changes the way we relate to it. It becomes completely different.
Yeah.
But we're not forgetting.
No, and you should and I don't think that that's the right thing to do either. Like Yeah.
Some people
it.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on the situation. This has been so thought provoking. Oh my God, I'm going to go buy your book. I'm buying your book now.
Good. Thank you.
I'm so interested, and I feel like this is something that we can talk about I could talk about for days. Seriously, it's important.
It is important more now than ever. And the reason for that is because, to go back to what you originally said, we perceive the world happening out there in chaos, and what people don't get is that the world is a reflection of our inner universe. It's a reflection of what we have going on in here, and until we can own that as individuals and see where our part in that is, there's no amount of protesting that's going to make a difference. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't be protesting if you're compelled to do that. I think you should. I'm a big advocate for taking a stand for what we believe in, and we make a difference to the extent that we can see the relationship between what's going on for us and what's going on in the world, rather than saying, wow, look how messed up everybody else is. The world is a mirror, and there are no exceptions to that. We think, oh, well, because I understand that because I'm spiritual, then, it's not my mirror.
Right.
And that's cool, because then we have, how empowering is that? Think about how much power we have to affect change. I mean, this is a long and fancy way to say what Gandhi said: be the change you want to see in the world. What he meant by that was, when we be who we want to see in the world, that's what shows up in the world. Literally. Yes.
That's one of my favorite quotes. I wholeheartedly believe that. And I think that, it starts at home, and it's all in the way you communicate with your children, and the way you communicate with your partners, and how you do all of it as a package deal kind of thing. So I'm with you 100% on all of it. And I think that it's important to include forgiveness in all of that.
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing it to light, because I think a lot of us don't do that. And I am going to add it to my daily practice. So what are you, I know that there was some stuff that you wanted to talk about. You have some stuff coming up, some projects and a program and some stuff. So let us know what it is. Jackie's going to put all of your links in the comment box, because everybody who is watching this, you guys, seriously, if you're catching the replay, if you're watching us live, this has been such an enlightening conversation for me, and I hope it has been for you too. I think, Micheline's been commenting this whole time. But I want you, I feel like we've all learned a lot from this conversation. And I certainly appreciate you sharing all this with us. And I would love to, have everybody have the ability to learn more if they want to, continue this.
Yeah. So this afternoon, I'm hosting a webinar. It's free. Jackie's going to put the link in the comments. And I'm interviewing Dave Schmidt. He is the founder of the Sedona Connection, and the work that he does is really focused on world currency, and it's a very different conversation, but we're going to be having a conversation today about him forgiving his father 40 years ago and how that impacted his life. He's developed a 3-step process that he uses to forgive. He is a person that demonstrates forgiveness in his daily life. Like we talked about, it's a virtue for him. Yep. So we're really going to be talking about the impact in his life. What has that meant for him? How has that changed the way he relates to life? And how has it changed his ability to create what he wants to create in the world? So an hour this afternoon, it's free. Join us if you can. And then on Saturday, I'm doing my first live group online coaching.
Wow.
Yes, I'm excited, and we'll see how it goes.
It's going to be great.
Yeah, so, I host a circle here or in Austin, and it's like a group, kind of like a group therapy session. So I'm just going to go with that model and see how it works online. I don't really know. I think the space is really limited for that. I'm not charging for few sessions, and I might not ever charge for them. They're Saturdays, 10 a.m. Central, so that's 11 a.m. Eastern and 8 a.m. Pacific. So every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Central, it's going to be an hour to an hour and a half. So I'm going to limit this space to between 15 and 20 people, and I'm just going to be, having sort of this kind of conversation. So this thing came up. How can I forgive? And, here's why I don't want to empathize with this person and what I really think about them. And, whatever it is, so we'll see how it goes, but I'm really excited about it. And the link for that is also, hopefully Jackie will post that. Yep.
She stuck it up there already. That's awesome.
So it's called the Online Forgiveness Circle if you're looking for it. And then, I've got my group and everything else. So you guys just check out the links, and I would love to have a conversation with anybody.
That's great. I certainly appreciate all this. This is amazing. I think I might pop in on Saturday morning. I want to say, I think it's great. And I'm always interested in listening to other people and, engaging.
What I found in person is that people really gain a lot of courage from other people. It's sort of build in the room, and then all of a sudden that thing that we definitely don't want to talk about doesn't seem like the end of the world. Right. Yeah.
Okay, you guys, it's been 35 minutes. It's been 40 minutes. Emily, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Thank you for sharing forgiveness with us. I think we all learned something. I hope that we have you back at some point during the year. We can talk about how it's all going and all that stuff. But so everybody take Emily up on her the stuff that she's got offering for us, and good luck tonight and good luck on Saturday. I'm sure it's going to be a smash. And I'm going to end the broadcast, but you're going to stay on. So thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you back here next. Oh, I'm off next Thursday. We are going skiing for the week, so it's winter break in New York. So we are no show next Thursday, but we'll see you in a couple weeks. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Okay.